folks, we're live and from Taiji, Japan. As you guys can see, the hunting boats are in drive formation. They're all lined up, chasing a pod of dolphins. It's just before 11 a.m. local time, so it's quite late in the day for the hunters. And they were all heading back to the harbor just about 45 minutes ago, and then all of a sudden they all turned around and just went in one direction and got into hunting formation. They've moved extremely quickly. They're already in past the lighthouse, getting close to the mouth of the Taiji harbor. And right now we're trying to take some photos to get a species identification here. So please bear with us if we happen to go quiet for a little bit. This doesn't appear to be a very large group. Move over to this direction. They're moving more and more quickly here. And again, folks, the boats were so close to coming back into the harbor empty-handed just 40 minutes ago, earlier or so. And one had already entered the harbor, two of them were just about to enter the harbor, and the others were not far behind. And then all of a sudden they all just turned around and took off after this pod. It seemed like one of the boats that was a little bit further out to the south happened to come across this group. And all the boats just took off in that direction. Black smoke, they were going so fast to go after this pod. And as they get closer and closer, we'll be able to hear the banging of the banger boats and get you guys a little bit higher so we will have a view over the branches as they start to move more to the right. And you guys can see just how aggressively these boats chase and drive after this small pod of dolphins. And a couple questions are coming in on our Instagram live feed. We're live on both Instagram and Facebook right now. And this dolphin hunt in Taiji, Japan is primarily for the captive trade. They capture dolphins from the wild in these drive hunts, and then these dolphins are sold to marine parks and aquariums all over the world. It's just pure exploitation of wildlife. And these captures are what keep these hunts profitable. Sometimes they do also slaughter dolphins, and the publicized purpose of slaughtering is for dolphin meat. But the demand for dolphin meat is extremely small. There's virtually no demand for dolphin meat on a nationwide scale here in Japan. And a dead dolphin sells for far, far less than a live dolphin does. And that's why the captivity aspect, or the live captured dolphins, are the only thing that keeps these hunts profitable. And as the boats continue to move over to the right and go behind the bush, they are right in front of the Taiji harbor right now. If they continue on the path that they usually do, they will come around and come back into a better view. So please bear with us for a little bit. We're also trying to take some footage and photos while this is all going on. And we do also have some Japanese activists up here again with us today. A little bit better view over the bush here. Folks, the reason why we continue to document and expose these hunts is to create more awareness. There's still so many people all over the world that are unaware that wild captures are still happening. Wild captures for the captivity trade. Taiji, Japan is one of the last remaining sites that this is happening. And it's an incredibly cruel process, from chasing and harassing dolphins from several miles offshore to get to this point is incredibly cruel and stress-inducing for these wild animals in and of itself. And beyond that, into the actual captive selection process and slaughters, the cruelty level just escalates. It's just an unimaginable amount of suffering for the dolphins. So please continue to share our live streams, tag your friends in our posts. The more awareness we spread, the more people can take action with us. And if you're watching on Facebook, please be sure to go to the Take Action link that's pinned in the comments. There's a list of things that you can do from anywhere you are in the world, as well as a list of authorities we can contact. And for you that are watching on Instagram, you can also go to the link in our bio, or go to dolphinproject.com and click on the red Take Action link. And there are steps that you can take from there as well. See if we can get you guys in a better view here. So It's a bit of a challenging spot when they get to the mouth of the harbor, just due to the amount of growth here. I'm not sure if you guys are able to hear it quite yet, but from where we're standing we can hear the banging on the larger boats. Those larger boats are also called banger boats. They have large metal poles that they store on those boats, and when they find the dolphins, they'll put part of the pole underwater and then hit the top end with a metal mallet or hammer. And that creates a very loud sound underwater. And as the boats line up next to each other and create a line, all the combined banging of those poles creates a wall of sound. Dolphins are extremely sensitive to sound. They're very acoustic animals. They have their own built-in sonar system called echolocation, and it's one of the most sophisticated biological sonar systems found in nature. But they are extremely sensitive to sounds, and all these banging and noise that the boats create is very disorienting and stressful for them. And unfortunately, that makes it easier for the hunters to herd and chase them. And as I'm hearing some engine noise, I'm going to anticipate the direction that they're going to come and kind of move you guys there. Several large boats. There's about 6 of the larger banger boats that are still in formation, and they've been joined by a couple smaller boats or skiffs also. It seems like they've regained sight of the dolphins. Look at how fast they're moving now. Chasing so aggressively. And this first boat, it's sped up quite a bit to block their path back to the open ocean. Alright folks, we've been able to get a zoomed in photograph to successfully identify the species here, and this is a small pod of bottlenose dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins are by far the most popular species for captivity, for the captive trade. In the past several drives that we've seen them capture bottlenose dolphins, they've only been subjected to the captive selection process. They've not been subjected to slaughter. And this is likely due to the fact that they are so much more valuable being sold alive rather than dead. A single well-trained bottlenose dolphin, I should say, has sold for as much as $150,000 US from Taiji here. It's an incredible amount of money. You guys can see how much aggression and manpower goes into chasing after these dolphins just to capture them, just to supply the captivity industry. This is truly the shocking and heartbreaking aspect that the captivity industry does not want us to see. That's why it's so important for us to continue to expose this, especially in real time through live streams. The water here is so close to the coast that it's quite shallow. Unfortunately, there's not very far for the dolphins to dive down, and I'm going to zoom you guys out as I move. See a little peak. They're starting to get them in between the two large rocks that are just outside of the cove. Please bear with me for a few more moments as I get to our other lookout spot here. And just as I've gotten over here, it looks like they're drawing the first net to trap the dolphins into the cove. I'll try and put you guys right here. go. That's better. You can see some of the hunters on the smaller boats or skiffs down there.
今この中央の船はですね、次の網を張る準備をしています。で、これはその一番最初の網はこちらの方になるんですけども、さらに追い込んでイルカの行動範囲をどんどん狭めていく。そうやってこちら側の浜があるんですけども、そちらに追い込んでいきます。今は多分もうちょっと外側にいるんだと思います。なので、あそこの船が待機して待って追い込まれるのを、待ち構えているという状況です。
It seems like the dolphins have surfaced just kind of beyond, behind the rock where that skiff is parked. You might have been able to see them come up just now, just a little bit outside of them. And it seems like that boat that's more in view with the yellow net is waiting for the pod to get pushed further into the cove so they can put down that second layer of net that further traps them. It seems like that pod has kind of stayed close to the area where the outer net has been drawn. Kind of behind where that boat with the yellow, the pile of yellow nets on board is. There's a city announcement that's being played right now on some of the loudspeakers around town. You might be able to hear that. And for those of you that have more recently tuned into the live stream here, the dolphin hunters here in Taiji, Japan have come across a pod of bottlenose dolphins, and they've chased and driven them into the cove here. Right now they have one layer of net that's been put down, trapping the dolphins in there. Oh, the pod just came up. You might have been able to see that on our live stream there. We're live on both Instagram and Facebook. Looks like the skiff by the outer nets is starting to chase the dolphins in closer. And the skiff with the yellow net is securing one side of the net against the rocks there, getting ready to draw it across. The hunters typically put several layers of nets up to trap the dolphins in here, so they can subject them to a captive selection process or a slaughter or both. Typically, bottlenose dolphins, at least in the past few seasons, have only been subjected to capture. It's likely because this species in particular is so in such high demand by marine parks and aquariums that it's a lot more valuable to sell alive rather than dead. The skiff's just moved. See if we can zoom our Instagram feed in a little bit more. So the dolphins have been kind of staying in that area by the outer net. That sound that you may have just heard was the town-wide announcement. We do have a couple Japanese activists that are still with us. Right now we're waiting to see what the fate of this pod will be. Facebook stream might have just seen them surface. There's one skiff out there that's kind of been trying to chase them in closer.もっと中に追い込もうとしてるみたいです。
今向こうのイルカ漁船がいなくなったので、一回港に帰って、
そうですね。
で小舟に乗り換えて、
はい。
という状況のようです。
This is a fairly small group of bottlenose dolphins. They tend to go down on dives for a couple minutes at a time, and the hunters have been kind of struggling to push them in beyond where that first net is drawn.
おそらくしばらく動きがないと思いますので、また後ほど中継します。
The pod is periodically surfacing kind of out where that yellow line of buoys or the net is. So bottlenose dolphins, as I was mentioning earlier, are extremely valuable to the captivity industry. They're the most commonly found species in dolphinariums. Unfortunately, they're extremely intelligent, as all dolphin species are. The encephalization quotient, or brain to body size ratio, of dolphins is second only to our own. So not only from an anatomical or biological sense are dolphins incredibly intelligent, but there's many other indicators that show the intelligence of this marine mammal, of dolphins. They have a very sophisticated method of communication. Some researchers may even argue that dolphins have their own language made up of clicks and whistles, and within that, different dialects for different populations. Different groups of dolphins also have specialized hunting methods. There's certain populations of bottlenose dolphins that use kind of like a strategic way to kick up mud to trap a school of fish in it, and then to feed on those fish. And that sophisticated hunting method is taught and passed on to their younger generations. Wild dolphins have also been observed doing various behaviors for a parent's pleasure. It's a mark of intelligence because behavior for pleasure expends precious energy. And so it takes a wild animal a certain amount of calculation to determine whether they have enough energy to expend for something that's not necessary for survival. Dolphins have been observed doing things like bow riding in the waves that boats create, or even surfing in coastal waters near beaches. Certain species have also been observed playing games and passing an object back and forth to each other, such as what has been dubbed by the leaf game among Hawaiian spinner dolphins. Certain species have also been known to give a signature whistle or a name to their young. Mother dolphins will give a signature whistle to their calf when they're born, and essentially it's used in the same way that we use names for each other when we talk to each other. And that signature whistle ends up being used throughout that dolphin's life. Seems like the hunters started to put out that second net, but they're drawing it back up again. We're currently waiting to see what the fate of this pod is going to be. There's still several hunters in skiffs or small boats that are driving around. in the cove here. And again, bottlenose dolphins are extremely valuable to the captivity industry. Of all the 9 species that are on the drive hunt quota, bottlenose dolphins are probably in the most high demand by marine parks and aquariums. And it is ultimately the profits from these live captured dolphins that keep these hunts going. So as long as people are buying tickets to see dolphin shows or to do trainer for a day programs, it's ultimately going to fuel this to continue. That's why it's so important for us to continually expose what happens here, to expose this horrific cruelty that is tied to the captivity industry. What's happening now in front of us, this wild capture process, is what marine parks and aquariums do not want you to see. There's an extreme level of cruelty that goes into not only the capture and slaughter process, but just from chasing and harassing dolphins for miles and miles from the open ocean to this point is incredibly cruel. You guys might be able to see how erratically those skiffs are moving around. There's 3 or 4 skiffs down there. And the pod of dolphins is underwater somewhere around them. As we mentioned earlier, dolphins are extremely acoustically sensitive animals. They're very, very sensitive to sound. And so the sound of those engines revving and driving around erratically like that can cause them to panic and become disoriented. You can very clearly see how erratically they're moving those skiffs around and using all that engine noise. There's the pod just surfaced there. Trying to keep both of our Instagram and Facebook in the best view. Alright, and now the hunters are starting to put out that second layer of net. That further traps the dolphins into shallow water. Hunters typically put up several layers of nets to gradually trap the dolphins closer and closer to the cove that's down below us. Below us, where the trees and the branches are growing, is where the captive selection and slaughter takes place. This pod seems to surface very infrequently. They'll come up and take a breath, and then they're back down on a dive for several minutes at a time, it seems. Dolphins are mammals, just like we are. They are warm-blooded and need to breathe air. And the fact that they need to come to the surface to breathe, unfortunately, works to the hunter's advantage. Right, folks, it seems that they might be waiting for the trainers to arrive. Bottlenose dolphins are typically subjected to only captive selection, as we've seen in the past few seasons. It can take a while for the trainers to get ready and to get to the cove. So I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream once, and we will go back live once the trainers or the hunters come back. So please make sure your notifications are on if you're on Facebook. And if you're following us on Instagram, you should be notified of when we go live again. Thank you. This pod seems to surface very infrequently. They'll come up and take a breath, and then they're back down on a dive for several minutes at a time, it seems. Dolphins are mammals, just like we are. They are warm-blooded and need to breathe air. And the fact that they need to come to the surface to breathe, unfortunately, works to the hunter's advantage. folks. It seems that they might be waiting for the trainers to arrive. Bottlenose dolphins are typically subjected to only captive selection, as we've seen in the past few seasons. It can take a while for the trainers to get ready and to get to the cove. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the live stream once, and we will go back live once the trainers or the hunters come back. So please make sure your notifications are on if you're on Facebook. And if you're following us on Instagram, you should be notified of when we go live again. Thank you.